Anime is in a great spot right now. It's more popular than ever, and more series with higher quality are coming out at a faster pace than anyone could have imagined. But I feel that in this modern era of anime, something is lost. I feel that I constantly hear anime fans talking about their new favorite thing ever, and then within 3 months they move on and that series is forgotten and left in the past. A big part of this is the industry. Sometimes it's just a better business decision to start a new series rather than finish an old one. This phenomenon makes it so that very few anime over 13 episodes long actually operate as full stories. Here are the ones that I can list. And even if a series does end, often its production is riddled with terrible drops in quality, and then after all that, sometimes anime just have terrible endings.
Just to suffer.
Anime which stand the test of time and contain a full story, which ends well, are extremely rare. And that's why I think classic animes are so beloved. I won't pretend I was around in the 80s, 90s, or even 2000s when it comes to anime watching. But there were fewer series at the time, and that's a fact. And it would seem that when something was greenlit, there was a clear intention to actually complete the story. Nowadays, I feel like most of these classics are given due praise, and sometimes they're even overrated. But there is one classic anime, and honestly probably many others. But today I'm focusing on one classic anime that I feel like has been forgotten and left behind in this era of modern flashy anime. And that is Monster by Naoki Urasawa. The story begins with a surgeon. He's just performed a life-saving surgery on a famous opera singer at the behest of his boss. All is well until the surgeon, Dr. Kenzo Tenma, sees a crying middle-aged woman, blaming him for the death of her husband. Kenzo eventually pieces it together. The woman's husband had arrived at the hospital first, and Kenzo, the most capable surgeon in the hospital, was supposed to operate on him. But he was switched last minute so that the hospital would gain prestige by saving the celebrity's life. This experience causes Tenma to question his own morality. Soon thereafter, the exact same situation appears before Dr. Tenma. He either saves a newly orphaned child near death, who arrived at the hospital first, or an important geriatric politician. Tenma, fearing that he makes the wrong decision again, chooses to save the boy, going against his boss's wishes. This good action makes Tenma lose everything. The hospital's director demotes Tenma, ruins his reputation. Tenma's fiancée leaves him over this, and now he's worked to the bone as a low-class doctor. The one thing that Tenma takes pleasure in is his conversations with the comatose boy he saved. All they care about is money. I wish they were dead, Tenma yells at the boy. Looking at the sleeping boy opens Tenma's eyes. Being a doctor isn't about research, money, or status. It's about saving others. And to resurrect this boy, Tenma gave up everything. And to him, that's worth it. Tenma goes to sleep after another long day of work. And late at the night, he's woken up by a knocking on his door. He opens it and hears these words. They've all been found dead. It's police officers. The men who replaced his position. The men who got the position Tenma wanted. And the corrupt director who facilitated his downfall are all found dead at the hospital that Tenma works at. Tenma rushes to the hospital to deal with the fallout. Police are everywhere, as of course 3 men had just died there. One scream breaks the noise. The kids are gone. Both the boy Tenma operated on and his twin sister disappeared amidst the confusion, without a trace. Soon thereafter, Tenma's given the position he's always wanted. He no longer has a corrupt boss. From the bottom to the top in a matter of days. Tenma himself says it best when he says, "What a life. Unbelievable. Life is unbelievable." Okay, I still haven't finished the synopsis yet, but oh my goodness, this is a great start to the story. It sets up the story and who Tenma is as our protagonist. A truly good man who's always at the whims of fate, desperately trying to make the best of things and do his duty. Also, the concept is so immediately gripping. Also, this all takes place within 2 20-minute episodes, so yeah, the pacing is just, so tight, and everything happens so quickly. I love the beginning. Okay, let's finish the synopsis. Tenma saved Johan, the boy, and quickly fell and rose in the medical world in 1986. 9 years later, in 1995, things are wonderful for Dr. Tenma. He's loved by the patients of his hospital. He could have any woman he wants. He's respected by his peers. And promotion further is fully possible for him. Then Tenma meets Junkers. This is a German name, so I'm probably butchering it, but anyway, let's continue. Junkers is a criminal who ran out into traffic and was hit by a car, which landed him in the hospital. When he wakes up, he deliriously talks about a monster. Soon, Tenma and Junkers develop a relationship. Junkers declares himself a new man, stating how he regrets all that he's done, and all he ever wanted was one cuckoo clock as a kid, which led him on a long path of crime and theft. Tenma supports Junkers in his transformation. One night, Tenma has a date to get to. He's walking to a restaurant and then it looks him in the eye. A cuckoo clock, exactly like the one Junkers had wanted as a child. Tenma quickly buys the clock and skips his date to deliver Junkers his present. Then he sees it. A police officer, posted to watch Junkers, is dead, lying lifeless on the floor. Tenma goes out the fire exit to see Junkers running down. Tenma chases. It leads to an abandoned parking lot. "Don't follow me, he'll kill you. He killed my friend," Junkers shouts. Tenma presses on and sees a shadowy figure hovering over a terrified Junkers. The shadowy figure says, "It's me. You saved my life 9 years ago." This is Johan, the boy that Tenma had saved, all grown up. It was Johan. It had always been Johan. From the murder of Tenma's superiors to a string of murders sweeping across Germany, it had all been him. "All those who see my face must die," he says. "But you're special. You are more like a father to me." Then he pulls out a firearm. Tenma protests, but it's too late. Johan fires 2 bullets, killing Junkers, and then he disappears into the night. Not before saying, "You wanted them dead. All I did was make your wish become a reality." Before Tenma can even process all that's happened, Johan is gone without a trace. Now Tenma, the sole man present for the murder of Junkers, in the eyes of the law, has committed murder. But not just for the death of Junkers, but for all of Johan's crime. Tenma realizes that the boy he saved was no boy at all, and now he must chase and kill the monster he mistakenly brought back to life. This is where the story of Monster truly begins. Oh my goodness, I love the beginning of this series. The breakneck pace and how much crap Tenma gets caught in for just being a good guy. Also, Johan has so much screen presence. It is insane. Also, how dispassionately Johan kills is bone-chilling. Also, the moral dilemmas. Is it Tenma's fault that that one lady's husband died? If making the right choice hurt so many people, is it your fault? Should you have not made the ethical choice in the first place? Are all lives really equal? These questions permeate throughout all of Monster, but are especially present in these first few chapters. All in all, the beginning is excellent. Now for the rest of the video, I want to go over a handful of points which I feel are important for me to talk about in relation to this series. Here's the list. Why did I choose to talk about these things in particular, you ask? Well, I thought that for people who had watched Monster, I could cover my opinion through these points, and give the people I'm recommending the series to a better idea of its strengths and weaknesses. And please don't click off the video, I know you aren't here to discuss my script writing. So let's get into the first point, which is production. This series is pretty old, so for a lot of people this will be one of the bigger barriers for entry. But come on, the production of the show is really solid. I'll be totally honest, it's not Kimetsu no Yaiba or Jujutsu Kaisen. It also doesn't have that more like polished look that modern anime have. I don't know how to describe it, I'm not an animator. There's no mind-bendingly awesome animation, but for the grounded series that this is, the production is perfect and never clearly lacking. Also, the voice performances are really good, especially Johan. Oh my goodness, that is an excellent vocal performance. And when it gets important, you know that budget kicks into gear. The soundtrack is also pretty good from, what I remember of it, and it gives this series this kind of unique and creepy vibe. Now let me talk about the biggest flaw or point of contention for this show, which is the pace and length. This show can be going again at a breakneck pace,
and then spend an entire episode focusing on a character who only has a tangential relationship to the plot. I think that these stories are really cool, but if you're expecting a sense of resolution around episode 35, you still have 40 episodes to go. This show feels really long. When you compare it to a similarly long show, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, that show feels so much shorter. I think because the characters' goals constantly change and evolve in a natural way. We're told that the Elric brothers' main goal is finding the Philosopher's Stone, but usually they're getting wrapped up in a major conspiracy or some other kind of dilemma. In Monster, on the other hand, most of the main characters' goals are to find Johan and end his crime spree. So if that's all you want to see out of the story, you will probably be very annoyed by the constant short stories. But if you have an open mind or patience to appreciate the little stories along the way and the random characters that are introduced, I think you'll get something really special out of Monster. These stories are where Monster flexes one of its biggest strengths, which is its characters. Perhaps the strongest point of this show is its characters. I would go as far to say that this show may have the greatest collection of compelling yet grounded characters in all of anime, and really good for all of TV. While stopping at random intervals to show random people sometimes can feel like a speed bump, it gives us 20 minutes to learn about people who have very little relationship to the plot, but still have really interesting stories. The characters along the way are what changes Monster from being a story about an epic game of cat and mouse and morality, and it gives the show a real heart. Monster is about Tenma trying to catch Johan, but it's also the story about a detective who loves his daughter trying to quit alcohol. It's also the story about two old people traveling around the German countryside. It's the story of truly messed up people who were abused, and how they respond to the world around them. It's the story of a man so consumed with work he loses everything, and really doesn't care. It's the story of a man on his journey to feel human again. It's the story of an orphan wondering where he fits in to a world that doesn't want him. It's also the story of a monster. Or is it? Okay, this is the obligatory Johan segment. Where do I even start? I guess I'll begin where I begin telling a friend of mine why this character is so great, which is Johan's presence. Johan has amazing screen presence. From the first episodes to the very last, the way he's treated by other characters and the things that he does just forces the audience to pay attention to him. One of my favorite scenes in the entire series is when Johan is lying to Schuwald in the forest that has been cut down. The way he lies in a way that overcomes the truth is so fascinating to watch. You can see how much joy he can bring through his words. But as we already know he has no concern with morality, this opens the question of what would happen if he used this unstoppable power of suggestion for evil. And 3 episodes later, we see it in one of the best directed scenes in the entire series, and again possibly in all of anime. Of course, I'm talking about the execution of Richard Braun. After focusing on Braun as a temporary protagonist for a few episodes, seeing what makes him tick, what he loves and what he hates, seeing how Johan breaks him subtly until hitting him with a psychological sledgehammer right before offering him that bottle of whiskey, unbelievable. My stomach dropped when I watched this scene for the first time. Johan is such an interesting and terrifying character to watch. I love how the series handles his past and origin. It alludes that something terrible happened to him. That maybe Johan himself isn't a monster, but he was made by a monster. But as we look into his past more and more, there was no monster who produced Johan, just so many flawed people and adversity. Mix that with a weak sense of identity, a weak sense of humanity, and that's when we end up with Johan. The ending of the series proves this. This segment is extremely spoiler heavy, so most of you should already know this, but of course the final scene in Monster is Tenma speaking to a comatose Johan who suddenly wakes up and shares the experience in his past that pushed him to becoming what he became. His own mother didn't even intentionally save him, and if she did, he would never be able to find out. He wasn't even given a name. Nothing made him, him. This gives him that aforementioned weak sense of humanity and identity which makes Johan a monster. But at the very end of the series, at least how I understand it, Tenma tells Johan the name his mother had wanted to give him, and then Johan disappears. But not without unmaking his bed, which is a clear sign that Johan had been in that room, which means he's no longer the demon Lung had described earlier in the series. The monster, Johan, has died, but hopefully the boy we never learn the name of can live as a human. On his own, Johan is a great character, but how he contrasts and reflects his sister makes him exponentially better. Johan and Nina are identical children with identical upbringings. Both have no name, both wear the same clothing, both are extremely intelligent. But they end up in wildly different places. The first time they diverge is when Nina is forced to go to the Rose Manor. But Johan, when she comes back, absorbs every single detail of that experience, except the moment Klaus tells Nina she can be anything. In the end, I believe Tenma tells Johan his true name, but doesn't tell Nina hers, because Nina forges her own name. Throughout the entire final episode, we see how people love and call Nina, Nina. Tenma doesn't need to give her a name, because she has made one for herself, because she knew that she could be anything she wanted to be. The way that Nina and Johan contrast each other and reflect each other is something that really just pushes Johan to being even better. This series honestly has so many excellent characters which deserve lengthy analysis. I didn't even mention possibly the best character in the series or the protagonist. And maybe I'll make those videos at some point, but for now I think that the point has come across, which is that this series has excellent characters and one of the best characters in Johan. For a slow burn series like this, the ending plays such an instrumental role. Does all of the build-up have a solid conclusion that makes it worth your time? For this series, yes and no. In a way, the conclusion feels underwhelming, but the ending is perfect because it's underwhelming. Spoilers ahead until this timestamp, and then I'll get back to not spoiler stuff. So the series of Monster ends in a little town where Johan's goal is to kill everyone who knows him, and maybe leave one person behind to remember him and deal with the consequences. The ending is a handful of really great, tense episodes of TV, but the emotional peak happens in episode 71 of 74. Nothing comes close to the death of Grimmer for the rest of the series. That scene where he lays in the chair, finally feeling all of the emotions he warded off, it's terrible, but Grimmer knows that in a way, it's true happiness because people need to be able to feel from the depths of their heart, and he hadn't for so long. In the end, Grimmer becomes human again and no longer separated into two. And that's such a powerful scene. And then there are 3 more episodes, which again are excellent but don't hold the same emotional weight. Still, let's talk about that climax. Johan says that all people are only equal in death. He pushes Tenma to kill him, or yet another innocent person will be killed. Then a shot is fired from some random hobo, which, while it feels slightly anticlimactic to have Johan get murked by some rando, it feels absolutely deserved, and almost like the perfect end. For all of his perfect calculations, he messed with a bunch of people, so one of them shot him. It's one of the very few scenes in this series where people get what they deserve. Then, one of my favorite moments in this series, when Tenma is given the choice on whether or not to operate on Johan. This is a perfect full circle moment. The entire series we question whether or not Tenma was wrong for saving Johan, or if he would be wrong in killing him. But in the end we see that though so many terrible things have happened because of it, Tenma is uncorrupted and will still save Johan because he's a doctor and all life is valuable. Then we have the epilogue, episode 74. And man, what a nice episode it is. It isn't anything crazy up until the final scene, which I already mentioned. But seeing how all the characters end up is just really sweet. And the last plot threads involving Johan's past are wrapped up, and then the strange, ambiguous ending is left as to what Johan's future may be. The ending of Monster is awesome. For a series this long, with this much build-up, it can feel like the climax is a little bit short, but it reflects the themes of the series and makes for a really awesome conclusion. And while I would think somebody would be wrong to say that they didn't like this ending, I think that it's fair to have issues with it. In conclusion, there is an anime that I think is a classic, a true masterpiece, though not without its flaws, that in some ways has been kind of forgotten. For a series this awesome, where are its fans? So yeah, please watch this and talk about it, because I think that it is one of the best series to discuss and talk about. So yeah, go watch Monster, and if you've seen it, comment what you think about it, because I just want to hear more people talking about this show. That is all. Thank you so much.